Hey, John Yaks here, co-founder of Hot House Yoga and Yaks Yoga Concepts. And question, is your yoga practice hurting your body? It almost seems crazy, right? Like your yoga practice is meant to heal your body, it's meant to make you feel good, to give you vibrancy, to give you vitality. And yet, if we don't understand this simple principle, we could be hurting ourselves through our practice. And this simple principle is what Chris and I call the practice forever principle, right? Because I joke a little bit, but in reality, understanding this principle gives us the keys to be able to practice for the rest of our lives. And it is such an important principle because it allows us to understand the uniqueness of our bodies. And what I say by that is that we all have the same bones, we all have the same connective tissue, but within that we are unique, meaning the shape of our bones is unique, and the shape of our bones dictates the length of certain connective tissue, right? So I'm going to give you this principle, and it's a fairly simple principle, but it's going to be one it may blow your mind. That is my hope for you, that you're like, this is good stuff. So I want to cover two principles. The first principle is tension. All right, so this is principles within this principle, right? These are so the first thing I want to cover is tension. And tension is simple, right? Tension is lengthening soft tissue to relieve restriction. And this is why we come and practice yoga. This is some of the main reasons, right? There's two main reasons, right? The two most important reasons we practice yoga are what makes a difference, what gives us the ability to practice. If we're doing it the right way, we're practiced till we're 100, right? We're healthy at 100. And these two principles is the development of core strength and mobility. So this is what yoga addresses specifically, is the development of core strength based on the movement, the actual practice, the different positions we're putting our bodies in. And then, of course, the transitions that we move from one pose to the other with. And then mobility, right? Which is what we all think of yoga. We think, well, I'm going to do yoga because I want to stretch out. I want to get more flexible. I want to become more open. But it's really undervalued, in my opinion. It's an undervalued component to health. We place way more emphasis on strength. And really not even core strength, but just non-functional strength. I'm going to just do my strength to create a specific look in my body and not address the real functional strength, the real reasons why a lot of people begin to deteriorate. Their bodies deteriorate, their health deteriorates as they gain in age. And so these two principles is exactly what yoga addresses: core strength and mobility. And now, what happens is we get into the yoga practice and we feel this immediately, tension. This is what everybody's going to feel in the first part of their practice, right? We come into a yoga practice and we start moving the body and we're like, oh, that feels so good, it feels so good. Or, oh, this hurts so good, it hurts so good. Because as we move the body, we stretch connective tissue. We literally start to feel the restriction in the connective tissue, and through the practice, we start to break through that restriction and we create length in the connective tissue, which creates mobility in the body, so that we're able to, think about it, right? Why is mobility important? Because I want to eventually, no matter how old I get, I want to be able to bend over and pick something up off the floor. I want to be able to reach up and take something off a shelf. I want to be able to slip and not blow my knee out or blow my hip out, right? Mobility is so valuable. And then I want core strength because I still want to play with my kids. I want to eventually play with my grandkids and my great-grandkids, and I want to continue to surf and continue to practice jujitsu and obviously stay on my mat, right, for the rest of my life. So tension is so important. So let me give you a visual. So if tension is, if you look at my elbow joint, tension would be this soft tissue here, right, having a restriction, right? So I feel tension there. But as I come and practice and do more yoga, I start to relieve that restriction, start to relieve that tension, and it starts to feel better and better and better and better. and amazing and amazing and amazing and amazing. Now here's the common misconception, all right, the misperception, right, is that in yoga practice, there is an endless amount of stretching that I can do. Meaning, I'll use the same joint as my example that, let's say I was doing bicep curls, or maybe I got injured and I have scar tissue, or I've just been working out and I have a lot of tension here, right? And as I practice and practice, I start to relieve it. I feel amazing, I feel amazing, I feel amazing. And at some point, this should never end, right? I get to here, this feels incredible, my elbow goes to there, and eventually it should go to there, and eventually it should touch my hip, or I could just swivel it around, right? And the answer is no, that is not the case, right? And it's easy, it's like I'm using the elbow joint as my example because it's easy to see, right? Obviously, at some point, this elbow is gonna straighten out completely. And what happens when it straightens out completely is the next piece to this principle. And this is compression. Compression is one of two things. It's either bone on bone, or it's bone on soft tissue on bone, which is really the more common of the two. Compression is when we hit the limit to our range of motion in any joint. Every single joint has a limit to its range of motion. Yoga practitioners that don't understand this principle believe that they can continually stretch and stretch and stretch and stretch. They can continually move through tension, continually go deeper and deeper and deeper into a joint. At some point, what's going to happen is bone on bone or bone on soft tissue on bone. And so I'll use this same joint as an example because it's easy for you guys to see. As I stretch and stretch and stretch, eventually there's going to be no more tension in this soft tissue, and I'm gonna feel it in the joint. I'm gonna feel it on the opposite side, deeper in the joint. So what happens is I begin to hit bone on bone in that joint, right? Elbow's a great example, but this happens in every single joint, guys. If it's my shoulder going up in flexion, eventually I'm gonna hit bone on soft tissue on bone. If it's my neck, my cervical vertebrae, and I'm going back, eventually there's no more tension here, and I begin to hit compression here, meaning a vertebrae on another, on the disc on another vertebrae begins to squeeze and begins to squeeze and begins to compress. If I'm doing a back bend through the other part of my spine and I get into the lumbar region, same thing happens. Eventually there's no more tension here and there's compression here. Now, compression is not a negative thing. Compression isn't a bad thing if we understand what compression is, if we understand our limitations. Meaning, if I move into a range of motion and I no longer feel that tension and I start to feel compression and I understand, oh, that's compression. Compression can stimulate bone growth. It can stimulate the bones if done with precision, if done with awareness. If done without awareness, not understanding what compression is, I'm going to continually drive into that soft tissue, bone on bone, and eventually what's going to happen? Call that aggressive compression equals joint distress and injury. Aggressive compression equals joint distress and injury. This is why people can injure themselves in a yoga practice. And this is most of the time why somebody gets injured in a yoga practice is because they don't understand what compression is. They practice for a certain amount of time. They go through this honeymoon phase, right? They practice, you fall in love with it, your body starts to feel amazing, core strength is developed, your movement is more fluid and powerful, your body is more open. You find everything else you do in life is enhanced. And then you continue to practice without understanding what compression is, and you feel like I'll be able to do back bends forever. I'll be able to eventually touch the floor behind me. And boom, your back goes out, or your neck goes out, or another joint goes out, your hip goes out, your knee pops, right? Some part of your body, because it hit compression and because you didn't understand what it was, and you forced it just a little deeper, maybe a lot deeper, you got injured. You get back on your mat, you don't understand, you do it again, and you do it again. We get caught up in this idea of performance in our practice without taking this concept, this practice forever principle into consideration, and our practice is going to have a short shelf life. So, and I'll say this through the thousands and thousands of classes that I've taught, the tens of thousands of students that I've taught. I see this all the time. I see people coming in that have, a lot of times they've had a previous body practice, right? They're a dancer or something like that, or a gymnast, and the whole idea in gymnastics and dance is beautiful, but the idea is performance. It's to get your body into a specific position, to do something specific with your body, regardless of these principles. And so I'll see dancers come in and just sink into connective tissue. The connective tissue becomes almost a hammock, and they start to drive, they're driving to the hips or driving to the shoulders and driving to a particular part of their bodies, their spines, their back bending. And I can see it, and I know they're compressing right now. So here's the key, right? So here's the takeaway from all of this is, how do I feel? So your question to me is like, John, well, okay, this is really good information, but how do I know? How do I know if I'm feeling tension? How do I know if I'm feeling compression? And it's all gonna come down to, where are you feeling it? And so I'll use the elbow because it's simple. If I'm feeling it here, it's tension. And I stretch and it's tension. I stretch and it's tension. I stretch and it's tension. And then I no longer feel it as much here. It doesn't feel like a tension here. I feel it as pressure here, deeper into the joint. That's compression. Tension, compression. Compression is always going to be on the opposite side of tension and deeper into the joint. I'll use a back bend as an example. If I'm back bending, I'm dropping my head back. Tension, tension, tension. When I no longer feel tension, compression is going to be here and deeper in the joint. If I'm doing a back bend, right, through the rest of the part of my spine, tension, 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 tension. Eventually, opposite side, deeper into the joint, compression. Right? Same thing with the shoulder. Tension, 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 tension. Compression, opposite side, deeper into the joint. Every single joint of the body, my friends, every single joint has a limitation. It's because of the structure of our bones, because we all have different structure in our bones. You're going to hit limitations sooner than other people, or later than other people, depending on the shape. Right? All depends on the shape of your bones. But know this is the big takeaway. Know this. Practice, move through the tension of the body, create that range of motion, and when you start to feel it on the opposite side, deeper in the joint, you're hitting compression. That doesn't mean the practice ends. Right? It doesn't mean your practice is over. It doesn't mean you won. Right? I won the pose. I'm done. It doesn't mean that. Right? Continue to practice. What it means is that your approach is going to be a little different. You're going to use more muscular energy to hold yourself into position. You're still going to do the maintenance of working through any tension. Right? Because as we grow older, as we do different activities, tension comes back into our bodies. And so we do the practice to move through that tension. But know that at some point you're going to move through that tension, you're going to start to feel compression. And when you know what that compression feels like, when you know where it is and how it feels, then you can play your edge. Little compression, it's healthy for the bones, it's healthy for the body, and then release and hold the strength of, using strength in that particular position. So I hope this helps. I hope this was, I hope that you had, your mind was blown a little bit. I hope that, and if not, I hope that there's some takeaways for you. Share it, like it, share it, send it to friends that are practitioners that need this information. Send it to friends that are teachers that can help them teach people, and just spread the message and get it out because it's important stuff. Yoga is powerful, and people should not be injuring themselves through the practice if they can avoid it. And that's it. Thank you so much for your attention. Thank you for spending the time with me, and until next time.